Why didn't you listen to me, huh? Why?
Do him, man. Do him.
What are you smiling at, huh? You want something to smile at, huh?
This is one of those scenes that sparked a ton of questions when it first came out. I mean, back then, everyone was talking about
Platoon.
And during its promotion, it was all about one thing.
The movie was written and directed by Oliver Stone, who dropped out of college in the 1960s to enlist in the Army and who volunteered for combat duty in Vietnam.
Thing is, it wasn't just the first realistic take on Vietnam. The catch was, the director had actually been there.
In this movie, Charlie Sheen plays Chris, who is really you.
But that's what people were talking about before they saw the movie. And once they did, the focus moved on to something else.
In the movie, the character takes shots at Vietnamese civilians and then turns the gun on one of his own men. Did that actually happen to you?
Man, come on, let's go, man.
And today, I want to talk about what's behind what I think is one of the most powerful scenes in war cinema. But before we get into the scene, let me give you some context.
New Year's Day, 1968. Just another day. Staying alive.
The moment happens after the main platoon in the movie has spent days patrolling the jungle, searching for any signs of the Viet Cong. And at one point, they lose sight of Manny, a soldier from the group.
Hey, where's Manny? Manny! Manny!
And well, what they find marks a turning point in the story.
It's the end of the mystery.
Especially because he's displayed almost like a message or a trophy, which of course is key to understanding what happens next, since, as you can imagine, it's what ultimately fuels the group's rage.
Motherfuckers.
That's why, the moment it happens, we cut straight to the next scene.
The village, which had stood for maybe 1,000 years, didn't know we were coming that day. If they had, they would have run.
Where we know nothing good can come of this, especially because as soon as the soldiers arrive,
There you go, Sarge.
this happens. What stands out about this moment is that Stone chooses to frame the entire thing in a single shot, placing us right behind Barnes' shoulders, almost like we're just another soldier, seeing it all from the platoon's perspective. That's why Stone films the man's fall in a way that makes him seem less like a person and more like an insect. There's not even a reverse shot of him, and the camera simply pans away, as if he's insignificant.
You got it, Sarge.
And you could say it's almost dehumanizing, but it makes sense because at that moment we're seeing things from the viewpoint of these soldiers, for whom that fallen man is nothing more than a blurry speck in the background. Because up until that point, the entire film is shown exclusively from the soldiers' perspective, where the Vietnamese are a mysterious presence lurking in the shadows, portrayed as a distant other. But the brilliance of this scene lies in how this perspective starts to shift. Take, for instance, the way the soldiers' arrival at the village is portrayed. You just need to look at these shots and consider who Stone is distancing us from now.
Hey, piggy. Hey, pig.
Remember, at this point, we're 45 minutes into the movie, and this is the first time we get a clear view of the Vietnamese characters, because up until now, the only glimpse we had was a brief, shadowy moment during the ambush around the 20-minute mark. But here, Stone starts closing the gap between us and the Vietnamese characters, partly because of the soldiers' actions, which seem unjustified.
I don't know, she's going on about why we kill the pigs, they're farmers, they gotta make a living, all that kind of shit.
But even more so because of how these moments are portrayed, captured with a raw, almost documentary-style realism that feels distant yet intentional, as if the camera itself is beginning to pull away from the soldiers. And we're watching them as if they're strangers, no longer within the perspective that once made us feel close to them. It's almost as if the distance from the previous shot has been reversed, bringing the focus much more onto the villagers, which is evident in how Stone dedicates several shots to highlighting their emotions, making it easier for us to empathize with them, while the soldiers, at times, are pushed out of the frame.
Fuck, we got one.
The only character from the platoon we still feel close to is Chris Taylor.
Come on, motherfucker, move!
And that makes sense because the whole movie is about how Stone puts us in his shoes. It's almost like a video game where you have to play that character.
What you doing in the underworld, Taylor?
Well, this here ain't Taylor.
You can see it not just in the war scenes, but also in intimate moments like this one, where everything is filtered through Chris's perspective, an idea that is pushed to the limit when Willem Dafoe looks straight into the camera and it feels like he's talking directly to you.
First time?
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the movie is that Chris could be anyone, and whatever he's about to do,
I wasn't gonna hurt you.
it's something any of us might have done if we were in his shoes, since the whole movie is about how just a few days at war can make us lose our sense of humanity. And I think that's what makes this scene so powerful. It shows us that the same men who'd go on to commit some of the most horrific acts the next day
You fucker! Get out of here! The fuck off! Don't do it! Don't do it!
are just regular guys. Guys who could easily be your group of friends.
As I was doing it, you know, I got good peripherals, so I could see Oliver over on the side. I could really see him going back. I was convinced that he was back.
A bit scared ourselves, and this guy refused to do something I had asked. Just confusion, and I ended up, as Charlie Sheen did in the movie, shooting at his feet.
As you can probably tell, this movie is about Stone sharing his personal truth about the war, at a time when the conflict was being hypermediated for the first time, and when also for the first time, a veteran used mass media to tell the story from his own perspective. But of course, not every war or conflict gets its own platoon, which is a shame, because every conflict isn't just fought with weapons, but also with narratives trying to take hold. That's where our partner, Ground News, comes in. An independent team that built an app and website to gather news from across the political spectrum. With them, I can compare how any topic is covered, along with insights on each outlet's political bias, credibility, and even their financial interests. You see this clearly in cases like when immigration agents arrested a Palestinian student who helped lead the protests at Columbia University, while a left-leaning outlet like The Week ran with the headline, "ICE arrests Palestinian advocate with green card." A conservative outlet like the New York Sun framed it as, "Leader of anti-Israel protests at Columbia University detained by immigration authorities." And just putting those two side by side already sparks a whole debate you might otherwise miss. Thing is, without a tool like this, you'd probably miss out on that bigger picture. Plus, most of the sources are highly credible too, which makes it way easier to cut through the noise and misinformation. And you can even sort by bias or credibility to filter the perspectives you see. And if understanding the world without feeling like you're being misled matters to you as much as it does to me, there's really no better option out there than Ground News. Especially because you can save 40% on the same unlimited access Vantage plan I use every day. That's just $5 a month for real clarity and context on the most polarizing issues of our time. All you need to do is head to ground.news/Lancelotti or scan my QR code. Huge thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this video. Now, let's go back to the video.
Well, we did turn our weapons on some Vietnamese, yes. And I saw quite a bit, and actually one time I almost killed somebody. Like that scene when he shoots the rounds at the retard boy's feet. That happened to me.
So, when I say these guys could be you and your buddies, it's because Stone wasn't trying to tell the story of a war hero. He wanted to focus on the average grunt, not the exceptional man, but the regular guy.
I volunteered. I dropped out of college, told him I wanted the infantry, combat, Vietnam.
And right there, you can already see he made a very deliberate choice about how he was going to approach the conflict. It's the opposite of what, say, Spielberg does in what is arguably the other most important war film to come out of Hollywood. From its very opening, it clearly lays out its intentions and how it approaches war, delivering what might be the most memorable battle scene in cinema history. Here too, war is portrayed as a raw, unflinching conflict, but the focus of that brutality is directed elsewhere. I mean, the moment they hit the battlefield, the soldiers are bombarded with a hail of bullets, and what we get is a series of graphic, gut-punching images, with soldiers crying like little kids, calling out for their mothers, and a shaky camera that mimics the movement of a war reporter's lens. At times, it feels like the camera itself is diving to the ground, almost trying to dodge the bullets, because throughout the whole sequence, it makes you feel like you're right there in the platoon. It's a conscious attempt to create a fully immersive introduction, something Stone also achieves, though in a very different way. You can see this from the very beginning, where the introduction literally eases us into the jungle. First, we get a shot of a helicopter, then Chris Taylor's arrival, a wide shot of the jungle from the outside, then shots of the platoon, and as we go further in, tighter and tighter shots until we're completely surrounded by the dense foliage. For a solid 2 minutes, the screen is filled almost entirely with leaves. Basically, it starts with an objective perspective and slowly turns into a subjective one.
Hurry up, bubble butt.
Until the experience becomes so intimate, you could swear you felt the sting on your own neck. In a way, both openings reflect the filmmaker's intentions. Stone needs us to meet Chris Taylor at his most unformed, fresh off the plane, so we can experience firsthand his loss of innocence and transformation. Spielberg, on the other hand, places the trauma right up front, not just to show that war is hell, but to elevate the men who endure it. Because in a way, that scene makes the heroes shine even brighter, as the more brutal the chaos, the more extraordinary the man who rises from it.
Yes, it is.
And opening with that sequence is no accident, since it paves the way for the call to action that follows just minutes later.
It's not going to be easy finding one particular soldier in the middle of this whole goddamn war.
Finding a needle in a stack of needles.
And it adds gravity to the decision to risk everything for Private Ryan, because we've already seen the hell these men might be walking into. But it tells you a lot about what Spielberg is really aiming for. Not just realism, but myth-making. He's crafting a sense of moral clarity right in the middle of chaos. And framing war this way is, in itself, a declaration.
It doesn't make any sense, sir. Why? Why me? Why do I deserve to go? Why not any of these guys? They all fought just as hard as me.
An insistence on elevating the heroic above the horrific, which is the complete opposite of this. Obviously, it's hard to compare a Vietnam War film to one set during World War II. They're different conflicts with different contexts. But I think it's always interesting to look at how a film achieves its effect, and what that reveals about the director's perspective. And you can see this in every aesthetic choice the film makes, like the way the action scenes are shot.
I got 2 of them fuckers, man! I got 1!
In Stone's case, for instance, we barely see the Vietnamese soldiers. They're kept off-screen, constructed as a distant, silent threat, hovering just beyond the frame. And the focus is placed entirely on the American ones. So much so, that even the dramatic climax unfolds as a crossfire between Americans.
Do it.
And from a filmmaking perspective, these scenes are far less raw than, say, the village sequence. Just compare how an attack suffered by the American soldiers is portrayed. Shot in darkness, off-screen, revealed only through reaction shots, to how an attack carried out by the Americans is shown, in broad daylight, and far more explicitly. In a way, Stone portrays the violence inflicted by American soldiers with more intensity than the violence they endure. Maybe because that's what truly haunts him. For him, war isn't a stage for heroism. It's the exact opposite.
Somebody once wrote, "Hell is the impossibility of reason." That's what this place feels like. Hell.
And that's why I'm always struck by the moment Charlie Sheen recalled filming that scene. How he could feel Stone reliving it, remembering it, like he was being pulled back into that moment. Because maybe that was his personal hell.
I don't believe what I saw. I don't think we were doing the right thing. I think we were hurting people. And I think that we were hurting ourselves a lot.
Because it's one thing to have the guts to criticize your own government when you're just starting your career. But to do it honestly, and to expose to the world a memory you're ashamed of, I think that takes an even greater kind of courage.